Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Supporting a Feeling Life. My name is Jonathan.
I'm Yasmin.
Today we are on episode 7 and we are doing a series on what is love. We're going to be talking about what about me, a condition that strikes everyone in a relationship. So sit back, you can look forward to some time with us talking about something which, well, I know I've been victim to once or twice over the last 25 years. What about me?
It's something that tends to happen when we don't talk about our needs or some of the feelings that we have, and we just soldier on, or we're busy, we don't get time to really ask for help. And if you're the type of person who prides yourself on being able and capable and coping and independent, then eventually something will happen, or your partner might talk about a need they're having or a feeling, and you'll go, me too. And then the what about me can tend to pipe up, not always at the right moment.
I think you're being generous there. Yasmin says pipe up, but actually what most of us experience is a sense of a very loud feeling inside that really wants to scream, what about me? When your partner is telling you about their needs or their distress.
So it's something that in the moment can be quite triggering. It can really put you in touch with a feeling that you may have been living with, sitting on top of, and it might strike you at a time that you're very busy, you're very tired, and suddenly the partner you have is really not well or not able to do something or up against their growth. So what are you going to feel in that moment? You're really going to be looking at a recognition inside of yourself, an acknowledgement of what it is you're feeling, but it's also going to invite you to acknowledge what someone else is feeling. And this is in intimate relationships, but it happens in family dynamics, it happens in friendships as well.
It actually happens in all relationships. And once you become aware that most people are not always very conscious of their needs, and so they can kind of spill out of them and into the conversation, which can trigger different reactions in people. And for some people, it can trigger the sense of needing to respond, like the sense of responsibility of feeling someone calling out and wanting something from you. So it could be particularly friendships and family dynamics can really create that pattern of people feeling this call to rescue people because these needs unconsciously keep on appearing.
I think it can also be quite a shock because it will often happen to people who are the supporters in life, the ones that friends turn to a lot, or the givers. And therefore that moment of recognition and shock, what about me, can actually be an entirely new feeling or language for that person considered. And that's not to say that the person who is coming forward first with all those feelings is wrong, but it just allows an adjustment, a recognition in that moment.
Absolutely, because the thing that causes the destruction in an intimate relationship, but also in family and friendship, is what we do with what gets triggered inside of us. And the common thing, and we'll talk about for a moment in an intimate relationship, is when, well, I'll speak as a man, we largely have learned that our needs don't matter, that in fact, not having needs is something to be proud of, and the less needs you have, the better. So when our partner starts revealing their needs, it's a very sensitive nerve that can be hit. And the what about me, or as I've sometimes called it, the what about meism, is this kind of default energy inside that we just can't help feeling. But it immediately will have the impact of shutting down the person who's expressing their need first. And it will become this, many of you will know what we're talking about, this horrible sort of wedge that drops between a couple when one of you has actually started trying to talk about something that's happening in your life. And if it happens repetitively, and it really only takes about 3 or 4 times in a relationship to experience somebody coming back at you with that kind of negative reaction of, well, what about me? For you to kind of go, oh, well, don't worry about it then. And you'll find ways of mitigating and kind of lowering your own sense of relationship with that growing need, because their response doesn't really make room for it.
I also feel that it's important to recognise, and this situation illustrates it beautifully, how similar our feelings are. And so we will reflect those feelings and needs to each other quite often. And it often will take us by surprise. But again, particularly if we just run out of steam, we run out of energy, or something is asked of you just one time too many. So there are a lot of different things that we need to be aware of in these moments, but it's important to just acknowledge what you hear and to allow the person who has expressed it first to feel heard, to actually say, I really understand what you're saying and I relate to this too. I feel this too. And that way it can become a joined experience, but it doesn't have to be a, this is mine or this is yours. But very often one person will have their finger on the pulse emotionally in a relationship, and they might be the first one to speak up.
So here's a question. What happens when the person, and you and I both know we experience this with our clients, and you may have experienced it with me once or twice in the earlier years, but what happens when the person's own unmet needs and own ability to not even acknowledge their needs rises so loudly that actually any of what you've just said almost becomes impossible? What do you do?
Well, of course, I'm speaking of the ideal and the best possible way to respond.
You're speaking of how we handle it now.
But initially there can be reactivity and there can be strong feelings. And again, it's really vital that if words come out and you're really feeling it and there's some reactivity or pulling back between two people, it is again vital to feel that element of love that is there, because often we can interpret this as a form of selfishness or putting our own needs ahead of others. And if we cannot remember either the basis of the relationship, which hopefully can be friendship and love, and we forget that in the moment because it's built up too much or too long, we're really left with conflict, and none of us will enjoy that feeling. And it's never about someone else's needs or feelings matter more than our own, but it is important to find ways of really talking about how it is and negotiating how you go about that.
And Yasmin mentioned then the friendship, so this has to be understood. This what we're asking you to do will kind of expose where relationships are at, whether they family, friends, or intimate relationships. Because if your partner is unable to hear you, then one key thing is once the sort of heat has died down a bit, there's no point trying to have a conversation around what's occurred when someone's in a defensive state. So if you notice your partner is being defensive, is not able to hear how it is for you and only hears criticism, and it's very important to keep this in mind that a lot of people are very quick to feel criticized because you are their source of love, which we'll talk about in another episode, but you are perceived as their source of love. So if you're talking about a need, then for a lot of people, their default is immediately, well, what about me? Because suddenly your struggle, your tiredness, your illness, your need to feel looked after is actually challenging what they've assumed they're always going to get from you. So one of the things that is very important is find the time to talk about it once the heat has died down from that place of friendship. And ask them to see if they can acknowledge what happened to them, because it can't change until both parties are actually aware of the dynamic that occurred and both parties are prepared to admit that they might actually have needs going on.
And often we are not conscious of our needs because we do just get into lives that are busy and we have routines, and we may have grown up not knowing consciously what our needs were. We didn't witness it around us. And discovering that we have a need that someone else has voiced and you're now in touch with can be uncomfortable, or it can be painful. It might bring up feelings of emotion and awareness inside of you. I recall as a young mother discovering that when I was looking after my children and caring for them emotionally, very often I had to do things that I had not received myself. I had to give in such a way that I recognized was uncomfortable, because I had a little what about me moment. Oh, the little girl inside went, oh, I didn't get that. And I felt really good that I could do that for my own children. But again, there's lots of different ways that we discover where we haven't been met, or a need that might still be there.
And our children are probably one of the prime areas where that will get triggered. We'll have all the best intention in the world that we'll want to give our children the things we've missed out on.
Yeah.
But if we haven't received them, in the giving, you're eventually going to run out. And all of a sudden you'll find yourself intolerant. You'll feel the word mum is no longer a loving word. In fact, it just sounds like a demand.
So who's that?
And then this can get transferred into your relationship, because your husband comes home and he's kind of hoping that you're going to be all in a good mood for him, and you just don't have anything to give. So what did you learn to do?
I learned to give and actually feel I was giving to myself in the same moment. I know that can sound really odd, but it really taught me just to give unconditionally from the love I had in my heart. And it reminded me and taught me that I needed to have love in a moment of acknowledgement and of being able to respond to another.
And so one thing it does teach you this is that not to abandon your need just because you've perceived that everyone else needs you more, be it children, friends, family, or partner. Do not abandon your need. One of the golden rules with this particular learning is you remain 50% responsible for your need. So it's a little bit like discovering that you're thirsty and you have a need for water, but you sit on the couch hoping someone's going to see it and meet it. You may say to your partner, I'm thirsty, and they might go, oh, really? Yeah, I get thirsty too. And you just go, well, that's great. And so both of you sit there being thirsty.
So it comes down to the old chestnut, doesn't it, about communication. And nobody knows what we need if we don't know, or if we don't communicate it. And that's really basic, but it's really very, very important. If we are so self-reliant and I'll just have to do it myself, then no one's going to know what we need. And we will become triggered by others' needs as they emerge.
I had to tell Yasmin time and time again, I actually really enjoy meeting your needs. I let me know what you need, because I actually really enjoy doing that. And it takes the kind of the guesswork out, and it certainly settles any part of me that felt like I needed to please her.
Absolutely.
But we can either sit on the couch and ignore our need, which is what some people choose to do. We can get up in a huff and go get a glass of water with a storm cloud over our head, which our partner then goes, what's wrong with you? And you reply, nothing.
Nothing.
Or we can get up and get our glass of water, knowing that we are lovingly taking care of our need, and turn to our partner and say, would you like a glass of water, darling? And you might feel your resistance and all the rest of it, but when you've given them the glass of water, that's your opportunity to turn around and say, you know what, I love looking after you, and I love it when you do the same for me. And it becomes a conversation, because this responsibility that we've got to heal, this ability to respond to our need by acknowledging we have them. And I've been discovering the more conscious I am of these needs, the more happiness I bring into my life.
And the more we express our love through being open to how our partner feels, what they need, and how good it feels to give. And so often we are disappointed in our relationships in life because we keep looking for others to be like we would be. If we're particularly perceptive about people's needs and how we respond, and we hope someone will do that for us, very often they might not be able to. They may not be attuned to it. And so we do need to communicate what we need.
And in the meantime, if you are not in a relationship, learning how to be that person who lovingly responds to your needs, then do that. Listen to this feeling, the growing energy inside that is giving you constant messages all the time about what actually supports you, and become aware of how often you may find yourself overriding or negating any need that rises up because, well, in some ways it seems safer because it's always vulnerable. It's always risky.
Always vulnerable. But this is what love is. When we care for each other and when we're open to each other, we feel each other and therefore have a sense of what is needed, even if it's just a hug. This is what love is.
And if you do this for yourself, if you do this with those you care about, you'll also find that it will build an energy inside of you, which will mean that when you are amongst strangers or friends, it'll be easier for you to carry a feeling that leaves them feeling like something about you is available. So, we hope you've enjoyed this short talk on what about me and how you can take care of this feeling inside of yourself and in others around you.
Take care.
We'll see you next time.
Bye for now.